Thanks for choosing to listen to this Late Night Linux Family podcast. We're only able to do this because of the people who support us. None of our shows are paywalled, but our Patreon supporters can get most episodes early and never hear any ads. Learn more at latenightlinux.com/support or support us by telling a friend or colleague about everything we do.
Hybrid Cloud Show, Episode 60. I'm Aaron.
I'm Gary.
I'm Sean.
And I'm Shane.
Welcome to the show about public cloud, private cloud, and everything in between. Our views here are ours and not those of our employers. So today I would like to ask you a question about the state of the industry. Is the industry better or worse than when you got into it?
Worse.
Measurably worse.
I don't want to be old man who says everything's worse. It's different.
But you don't have to be. It's true.
Probably worse.
You guys are grim.
It's differently bad.
Okay, but in what ways is it worse?
Well, I'm going to go for how is it differently worse. When I started in the industry, I was having to do stuff like put my back out by lifting 4U ProLiant boxes in and out of racks. And I was on call and I would have to physically go to the data center and wait on a Dell guy to turn up to replace parts. That was pretty rubbish, but also the infrastructure was simple enough that 2 or 3 people in our team could understand how the entire thing was held together and sufficiently run it. It was bad, but also life was simpler. I just had a lot more breadth of responsibility. Whereas now I feel like, at least even in the last engineering role I was in, I had such a slim amount of responsibility compared to what I used to have back in the old days before cloud existed. But somehow I was more stressed and was doing more work, even though I was only looking after maybe half as much of the stack. That's pretty rubbish.
Somehow I've got a mental image of you skipping over a hill covered in daisies with a server in your hand.
There was a blast mound between the 2 data center halls that I had to carry servers over occasionally. So I don't know, maybe it sometimes had daisies on it.
Skipping over the blast mount.
Oh my God.
Only with a 1U box though. Nothing more than that. That would be too heavy. Couldn't skip with a 2U box.
I think I know what you mean, Gary. I wasn't doing the hardware end of things, but like in the early days of my career, I was tweaking Apache 2 and MySQL configs to like eke every bit of performance I could get out of hardware because like vertical optimization was just cheaper than just buying more hardware. And I think that instinct's been largely lost. And so horizontal scaling has become cheaper than engineering time. So the math makes sense, but we're quite wasteful about how we deploy things now. Just throw more compute at it and the fundamentals are kind of lost. So I kind of feel like we're definitely more wasteful as time has passed, and it's kind of been less fun. I was responsible for like a handful of servers that were driving like really high traffic sites, eking out any performance I can get, and I felt less stressed doing that, even though if anything went down, it was catastrophic, than I do like in recent roles where it's, you know, cloudified and much more abstract. And I guess there's much more to reason about effectively.
But then if stuff went down, it was like, oh, this is Shane and he's my guy and he's the only one who can fix this. Not, oh, which squad do I have to shout at this time? Because AWS have screwed something up, right? I almost felt more valued in that scenario because people realized that I was getting out of bed and jumping into my Mark II Polo at 3 o'clock in the morning and driving 30 miles to the data center. Whereas now that's completely lost. If I can have to get up at 3 o'clock in the morning and flip my laptop open, dial a VPN and, I don't know, do something in AWS, like delete a VM and redeploy it or something, I feel differently valued for the skills that I have as compared to when there were just a few of us in the team. And I think you're right. Some of those basic sysad skills have almost been devalued and lost. And people don't want to troubleshoot stuff anymore. They just deploy more resource or change a couple of variables. And it's just not the same as it was.
I've been at companies where rather than understand their systems and optimize like certain MySQL queries in PHP over ORMs. They'd rather just live with that shoddy performance for years and pay way more in compute. And then eventually I get annoyed and dig into it and save tons of money because I decided to dig in and figure it out. But that mindset's definitely not there in a lot of people. And they're not really incentivized to go after that.
But then think of the awards you're going to get when you suddenly reduce the cloud bill by 50% just by applying common sense to something.
I guess.
But I don't find that award valuable, right? Because I'm just using the skills that I have to solve what should have been a very basic problem that no one else could be bothered to solve. It's a real 50-50. I don't know. I'm very conflicted by it because I have that ability to dive into something and work it out. And years ago, I would have had to have done that because just giving another 5 cores to a MySQL server wasn't an option.
Along the same lines, I've also seen kind of, I don't want to call it degradation of skills, but just a different focus of these kinds of skills, right? No one's really looking at performance optimization anymore. No one's reading profiles to see if, there's a memory leak. No one's checking, do I need 50 connections to a pool? Or can I get away with 25? Or do I even need 20? These kinds of things aren't being useful because I just can scale up and no one's going to complain until I get to 20 pods and all of a sudden everyone's being kicked out of the database because there's no connections left. We're at the point of scale. And I feel like in the past, there was more of an emphasis on this and people were more disciplined. And yes, it sucked to write an ORM by hand. But at the same time, you understood exactly what was going on and how those relationships worked.
Yeah, I mean, I remember working in the not so distant past on a problem with a customer where they had a Django application that took 15 minutes to start. It was this huge Django monolith, and it was effectively stopping them from adopting Spot instances on AWS. And specifically, they wanted to adopt ARM-based Spot instances. And because of the termination time of the Spot instances and the fact that their application took longer to start on a new instance than the termination notice time, they couldn't adopt it.
Cacophony of bad ideas there.
Freaking tragic.
The thing here was, it was like, well, we'll just keep using normal instances then. It's like, but think of all the money you could save. Your application is literally agnostic to what it's running on. It's Django. It doesn't matter where you run it. It could be ARM, it could be Intel, it could be AMD. No one cares. It's Django. And you don't want to dive into the performance profiling of your application, which regardless of if you're using a Spot instance or not, a 15-minute startup time for a container is a problem that you should have been flagging when it got to more than 2 minutes, frankly. And you didn't. And now it's a real difficult old school problem of profiling the application, looking at the calls it's making and unpicking it, that as a consultant who's not hands-on, I can't help you with, and you no longer have the in-house skills to do. And that's a real tricky problem.
How much do you think this is really an industry shift versus you three just getting promoted out of jobs where you had nice, straightforward objectives to do with performance and into bigger picture things that don't let you dive into the weeds?
I think it's an industry shift because in this case, the customer literally couldn't find someone internally to performance profile their own application. That's a pretty big industry shift because I can guarantee you 10 years ago, if I'd gone to the .NET developers I was working with and said to them, it seems to take a really long time to do X, can you work out Y? They'd have absolutely dived into the profiling of it because that's what they did. They were software developers and they understood what their software was doing and were happy to drive into a performance profile of it. And the other thing is everyone optimizing for mega scale, regardless of whether they had it or not.
I think that's the bit that strikes me as different. I feel like the industry's gotten far more corporate, and where before it could be this guy and this girl know how to run these servers or run these applications. It has to be like shared risk and teams. And I think that went hand in hand with everything being mega scale effectively. And so we don't opt for simpler solutions when they may be the best solutions. We default to the mega scale, even in small companies.
Oh man, like I remember having problems with like SQL reporting queries and just going and tapping Dave on the shoulder and going, hey, I've noticed this report is taking 10 minutes longer to run than it used to. Can you dive into it? And him coming back to me within half an hour and just going, oh, that SQL query, all sorted, done. I don't think that would happen in the current culture of companies. I wouldn't be able to find the guy who worked on SQL Server reporting services, let alone just walk up to his desk and tell him I've noticed a report's taking longer to run. And I think you're right. It is as much of an industry shift as it is a cultural shift, as it is a shift of moving blame elsewhere, as it is a change in the skill sets that people have and value.
When I first got my first job and I was interviewing, they asked me things like statistics, critical thinking skills, and obviously basic, like, syntax, like, do you know how to program, right? They weren't asking me, can you deploy a full stack application on a cloud using the specific tooling? And let me see a repo, and I'm going to check every commit. And Gale wasn't even around. So I really feel for people trying to break into the industry right now, not even like level 2 or level 3 engineers, talking about like just entry level engineers, because excluding AI and the impact that's had, you have to know so much more. It's not just critical thinking you're being tested on. It's, can you be of value, immediate value to me? And that's, I think, an unrealistic expectation.
Yeah, and this is an interesting conversation I've had is I've started to hire people recently is I actually don't really care that much about your technical skills. I can teach you how our product works. I can teach you what all of our internal processes are. What I care about is critical thinking skills, your ability to learn stuff, and are you someone that I would be comfortable putting in front of a customer? And that now feels like a really old-fashioned way of recruiting and interviewing people, because I've gone for jobs that are my role in another company where, like you said, Sean, they've expected me to go and deploy some end-of-life Go application on a Kubernetes cluster in a cloud I'm not familiar with, and it's got to be compiled from source, and I've got to build all the CI/CD and everything like that. Like, dude, this is a hands-off consultancy role at a security company. That's not even what my job is. I'm not interested in that. And this was before AI was a thing, and clearly now I can just go and ask Claude to solve that problem for me. And therefore that test is of little value. And he said, regardless of the AI stuff, but I actually think that we should be putting more of a focus on old school interviewing techniques. Can you critically think? Can you very quickly grasp ideas and technologies, and not just going, can you solve this problem and be of immediate value to me? Because that, to me, in 2026 matters less than ever.
Yep. Here's a hot take. I think that we were harmed by not having any kind of like industry standard for software engineering. All the other types of engineering, you have professional engineering, there's tests and rigor to those. And for software engineering, it's kind of just the Wild Wild West. And every company had a different standard, different calibration for all these kinds of things. And it really focused on critical thinking and maybe a specific tech stack that that team was for, right? I can see some of that, right? Maybe one of the several interviews you do. But nowadays, I think you're exactly right, Gary. I think we have to go back to these critical thinking, these fundamentals of things that really matter, because at this point with AI, like the technical piece of it doesn't matter too much.
No, and I have always been honest in interviews and said, look, I am not the strongest coder in the world. I'm not a software developer. But if you give me some code and you want me to read and understand what it does, sure, I could probably do that. But that is not where my skill set lies, and I don't think it's ever particularly held me back from getting offered a position.
I'm going to be a relentless optimist, and I'm going to say that the industry is better than it's ever been. Now, bear with me, because I know I've got 3 skeptics. But I think that it's never been so possible to go from idea to implementation as it is today. I think that the ability to dive deep into basically anything you're interested in, while at the same time skate over the details that you don't want to be interested in, and the ability to kind of convert idea into business value is more closely aligned than it's ever been. So I think that the sort of pieces that are available today for people to build on and get into in whatever area that they're interested in just gives so much opportunity for interesting stuff at every layer of everything.
Because everything's too complex, or what?
Well, I think if you're the sort of person who wants to get really into profiling of a particular software stack, you can still do that, right? And so much of the world's infrastructure is built on open source applications and infrastructure layers that you can get into those if you want to. And there are open source libraries you can go and contribute to and get right down into the detail. And there's artistry in a lot of those. People care about the craftsmanship there. Or if you want to sit down and you want to open code up your latest kind of Vibe application and get a dashboard that shows you something in an hour and then dig into the details you care about, you can do that too. So, I just think that we're at this really interesting place where so much is possible, either in the detail space or in that kind of concept to reality space, that it's more exciting than it's been.
Aaron likes that it is possible to do everything badly at this point. And that is a very different kind of generalism to the one that we're all harping back to.
Yeah, it's fair. Like, you can get outcomes faster now, I suppose. But whether the industry's better or worse, I guess it's a very loose definition of what better or worse is. I guess for me, I'm probably having less fun than I was 10 years ago, optimizing those SQL queries.
I think you're right? The question really is better for who? Better for a manager who wants business outcomes delivered quickly and doesn't care how it's done, maybe. Better for an engineer on the ground who actually wants to learn and develop. I'm not so convinced.
Better for shareholders, though, which is the most important thing.
Sure it is. I don't care about them.
Don't take me as thinking that I don't enjoy that kind of deep technical love of code. Like, I think that is something that at an intellectual and a passion level is so awesome in the open source community. Like, it's one of the things I love most about open source is that people care about that quality and craftsmanship. But I think it's cool that you can do both.
You can do both. The question is, what is being asked of you? And I think that's kind of what Gary, Shane, and I have been harping on, which is, does your boss care that you took the time to really optimize your code and to optimize your stack? Or are they just asking you to ship a new feature? You're right. It is incredible how quickly you can go. And I'm so glad that I don't have to wait an hour of trying to debug some sort of Grafana dashboard to show me my Nginx ingress data, right? Like, give that to an AI, spit it out, right? And you can even have it tailor it to what you want. Awesome. But is that where the value is? Is that what's being asked of you? Did your manager ask you for that? Or did he ask you to, deliver on some other kind of feature work? And yes, you are absolutely right. There are definitely projects out there that value that artistry. And that's where that fun is. That's where the passion is for a lot of us. And that's why it hurts to see some other projects go the other way of, I don't care if it's clean or if it's efficient. I just care that it works, that it delivers that feature, that delivers that value. And there's both sides. And it really depends on who you talk to.
Yeah. And again, I think that's where the question of who is it of value to matters, right? There's always been this trade-off of just doing the thing and ticking the box and closing the Jira ticket or whatever it is. But just ticking the box and doing exactly what the user story asked me to do has never particularly been what I'm interested in. I'm interested in, can I deliver the thing? Yes. But can I learn something from it and do it right is always my primary objective, which is at odds with just asking Claude to spit out the Grafana dashboard, because I'm never going to learn anything or understand the why from doing that.
I think a lot of that's been there forever, though. So I remember back when I was first learning to code, when I was 9 or something, and, even in those early sort of periods through early programming, people were doing, when it was possible, Access, Forms and Visual Basic and all those sort of things. We had the progression of all those things that were business apps that had no artistry in most of them. They were just the most cost-effective way you could get someone who didn't know very much to help you access your database. I think there's been a lot of crap for a lot of time.
Were any of those ever any good? No.
No, those are awful.
They were all terrible, all the time. I have never looked at a Microsoft Access form or a business that's driven by an Excel sheet and thought, yes, someone did this properly and put pride into it.
Really honored the craft, yeah.
Okay, I'll give you that.
I think one of the objectively worst things about the industry right now is how hard it is for juniors to get into companies. I am really worried about the long-term effect of that. I don't think companies are hiring nearly as many junior engineers, and they're not willing to invest the time and energy to grow people in that way. I'm already seeing that, and it's really sad. Like, there's just a lack of diverse opinions really happening. It's whoever's already in the senior game, you're great, but everyone else is locked out, which is sad. And there's a missing enthusiasm, I think, that's going to eke away at the industry as well. And I just don't like the way this is going. So I think that's objectively worse.
Remember boot camps? Remember how that happened to us? And we just got this giant injection of just new talent. At the same time, it was very rough talent, and we really had to mold them. And it was just people looking for money, right? And you could really quickly sort those people out. That was a fun time.
But now you can get a GPU instead.
Jesus.
But I think there are also younger people who have a genuine interest in a certain area of technology. And there is something nice as someone who has more experience in the industry about taking that person under your wing and really helping them to flourish. And I think those people are actually at more of an advantage now than they've ever been before. You know, before you get people come in because they were like, oh, I studied software development at uni because it seemed like a good career to go into. And those people aren't going to be the type of people that I want to hire now, right? The type of people that I want to hire are, I have a genuine interest in this, I see the real world problem that your product solves, and I want to help do that. And I think for me, that's a net positive, is that those people now have a chance to shine, not on technical merit, but on passion about the problem space that they're trying to get a job in.
Do you think it's possible for people who don't have that interest to be any good in the technology space?
It depends on their, let's say, discipline. Because you can do something every day and be disciplined about it and continue working on it, but it's going to be a slog to get there, and it's going to take a long time, versus someone who lives and breathes stuff because that's their passion, that's their art that they want to work on, not just as a side project, but as their main job, right? And getting a chance to do that full time, so you actually get the physical hours in the day to do that. I think, yes, it's possible, but like Gary said, if I find someone half as good, but with double the passion, I'll take them instead.
I mean, if I find someone who can't write a line of code, but has a home lab and is earnestly trying and will stay up until 2 o'clock in the morning trying to figure out why their Terraform won't work, I'm hiring that person over someone who has their certs any day of the week.
I think what we're talking about here is natural curiosity. And I think there's like a compound interest on curiosity over a 10-year career, we'll say.
Ooh.
That's just incredibly valuable. And if you lack that, there is just only so far you can get in the industry compared to peers who have that curiosity.
I'm stealing that.
I'm seeing that on one of those quote banners on LinkedIn.
I think someone who really is interested in what they do is going to be a better engineer. No matter if they ever end up getting to the same level of skill as a peer who has the degree and has all of the certs and everything else, they are going to want to solve the problem. They're going to want to communicate with people. And I think that they're going to, as we've discussed before, be the type of person who is willing to admit that they don't know what they don't know, but is also going to really, really earnestly want to learn what they don't know. You're right. This stuff compounds very quickly. And I've seen people who have got a computer science degree and have got certs up to their ears in whatever their particular technology of choice is, flop out of the industry because they just burn out and suddenly the money doesn't matter anymore, and getting senior principal, whatever on their CV doesn't really matter to them. It's not an achievement, right? It's just the next rung up the ladder. And beyond a certain point, it's diminishing returns.
Well, that's probably a good place to stop so that we don't get back to talking about all the horrible ways our industry is broken. But if you'd like to send us a message to tell us all why you like or dislike the industry, please do at show@hybridcloudshow.com. We'll be back in 2 weeks. Until then, I've been Aaron.
I've been Gary.
I've been Sean.
And I've been Shane.
See you later.